The proprioreceptors are sensory receptors or stretch receptors within the joints, muscles, and tendons that detect body and limb movements. This model is a representation of the arms. This is the tendon. These are the muscle spindles and the muscle fibers which are contained within the muscle spindles. Muscle spindles detect the stretch of the skeletal muscle through the muscle fibers. Sensory nerve ends are wrapped around the intrafusal muscle fibers. When the arm stretches to throw the ball, the somatosensory receptors process the stimuli and send it to the brain through the posterior funiculus medial lemniscal pathway. The primary neuron, the purple string, stretches from the sensory receptor to the spinal cord through the posterior root ganglion. The primary neuron ascends through the posterior funiculus. This is the fasciculus cuneatus and the fasciculus gracilis, specifically the fasciculus cuneatus, since the receptors are from the upper limb. The primary neuron then synapses with the secondary neuron in the gray matter of the medulla oblongata via the nucleus cuneatus and the nucleus gracilis. The secondary neuron, the dark blue string, decussates prior to the entry into the medial lemniscus. It then proceeds to project within the medial meniscus, within the midbrain, to the thalamus. The purpose of the thalamus, the red highlighted portion of the brain, is to filter the incoming sensory input. The axon of the tertiary neuron, the light blue string, extends from the thalamus into the cerebrum, more specifically the primary somatosensory cortex, within the postcentral gyrus of the parietal lobe. This is the process of the sensory pathway. It then proceeds to the motor pathway of the lateral corticospinal tract. The lateral corticospinal tract are direct pathways that innervate the skeletal muscles and control skilled movements in the limbs, such as throwing a ball underhand. There are two neurons within the lateral corticospinal tract, the upper motor neuron and the lower motor neuron. The upper motor neuron is housed within the cerebral cortex, in this case the primary cortex within the precentral gyrus. Within a direct pathway, the upper motor neuron extends from the frontal lobe of the primary motor cortex through the internal capsule and cerebral peduncle of the brain. It then proceeds through the corticospinal tract of the spinal cord. The upper motor neuron decussates in the pyramids into the medulla oblongata. The axon synapses on the lower motor neuron within the anterior horn of the spinal cord. The upper motor neuron does have the capacity to excite or inhibit the activity of lower motor neurons. The lower motor neuron extends from the spinal cord through the anterior root ganglion to innervate the target skeletal muscle. It then signals the muscles to contract.